All right, thank you all
Push
for
that
joining.
direction.
I see that some people are already logging in. Welcome to the session. We were just having a chat about going back to in-person events and drinking beers, obviously, because, we like beer. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting session. And Derek's been hosting a lot of good meetups this year already, and every single one just is better than the previous one. And so let's see if we can top it this time with Austin. So Derek, I'll leave it up to you to introduce the session and let us know what we're going to do. And if you have any
cool.
questions for us, by the way, put them in the chat or the Q&A, preferably in the Q&A. You can see other people's question as well. You can upvote a question if you like it and you think, hey, I want to know that answer to that as well. So yeah, let's make this interactive and let's join the conversation.
Yeah, cool.
You, Derek.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight, and thanks Austin for coming through. We obviously got quite a bit of pressure on us now. We've got to beat the last one. So I just want to do a quick introduction of Austin and some meta information. Then we're going to get straight into his talk. So I just want to start by introducing Austin, right? So I had some back and forth about how to actually introduce Austin. Yeah, he's actually quite humble when it comes to this. I've worked with him in the past, I actually think there's a lot of good stuff to say. But what he wanted me to tell everybody is that he loves coffee, and I've seen that he loves coffee with salt sometimes, and sometimes even chili, which I haven't joined him on that one. But apparently it's brilliant. I think always tricking me, but I haven't had the courage to find out. So I initially met Austin through SAGSA, which is the South African Scrum Group of South Africa, and the Scrum User Group of South Africa, rather. Austin really, I've got to say, contributed to the South African Scrum community in some really great ways. He was a great bedrock of knowledge, somebody you could really go to if you're struggling with any kind of concepts, and he's obviously agile coach, and he's really helped a lot of people in South Africa implement Scrum and get to terms with it. He currently works for IHS Market, which I know nothing about actually. I hope that's still where you work actually, Austin. And if you go to his LinkedIn profile, there's people that call him an agile coach sensei, which I agree with. So I think tonight we're going to, well, it's night here. I think we're going to get some really interesting information on impact mapping, and I'm looking forward to that. So Austin introduced me to impact mapping actually a good number of years ago when we were struggling to make sense of a big body of complicated organizational mix. And we went through it a number of years ago, and it was a really great tool for understanding and connecting users to value. And after that time, I hadn't really used it for a long time. And then recently this year, I came across another project where we were kind of wrestling with the same thing. How do we connect user value to the features that actually are going to be delivered at the end of the day? And I started pinging Austin up on WhatsApp, asking him some questions, and he was kind enough to help me with that project, just with some help. And then I had a second project that had a similar problem, and I asked him again for some more help just to try and understand impact mapping. And this is the story of that. This is the first version where I just kind of scribbled it out to try and understand how things fit together. And you'll see some dotted lines and things like that in between. That's actually filled out in between the answers that he gave me. And this is iteration one of trying to just really connect this value with what we had to build, with how it actually impacted users. Then he said, no, you need a lot more space than an A4 piece of paper. So I did it again in a mind map the technology, which really fleshed it out into something massive. But that was really, really useful, because before I started on this project, I was really able to understand the type of features that need to be developed, what that impact is going to be on specific users, and how it impacted them. So it was incredibly useful before we even started the project. And that when it came down to starting the project, everything goes a lot smoother. This isn't the actual project. I'm just showing you a screen. You guys should be familiar with this. This is where you create an app on Mendix screen. So, it's a great tool. We're going to plan out your projects. We're going to hear more about it now. So this is really the value I got from it. It just helped me to identify features, helped me to create a good overview of the whole space that we're going to be working in, and guided us in decision making. So it's been really useful, and I think tonight we're going to really be able to understand more about it and get a lot of value from it into our various projects. Before we go further, there's just a few more things I need to say. I need to just talk about Mendix Malt. So what Commotion does as well is run the YouTube channel dedicated to Mendix. It's called Mendix Malt. Some of you might know about it. There's a brand new video up that I put up today. What type of Mendix developer are you? Where we just talk about the different type of projects that's available and what you might be more suited towards. So it's pretty interesting. Please go and check it out. I'd love to hear what you think about it. It's part of the way that we kind of contribute to the community of Mendix. More than just a meetup, this is the second way. So I really hope that there's some positive engagement. Talking about engagement, I'd really like to engage with people in the community, and that's really the health of the community, is the level of engagement that we have with each other. So I want to invite you to connect with me anytime on Twitter, or of course, our Slack community, right? This is our Slack group. This is where we really have some good interaction. So please feel free to drop me a message anytime. It'll be great to hear what kind of projects you're busy with, what you're struggling with, what you're succeeding with. Just strike up a conversation. It's really good to have as a community. So speaking about community, everybody knows, I hope, Mendix World is on the way. It's announced, I think the main keynote speaker has been announced as well. So go and check that out. Here are the dates, 7 to 9 September. I'm looking forward to it. I think we're going to be able to get some great value from that. So that is the end of my introduction, and it's over to Austin now to take it further. So I'm going to kill my screen, my sharing here, and you can go from there, Austin.
Thanks, Derek. First off, I would like to point out that I'm not wearing the same t-shirt as my LinkedIn profile. Yeah. Okay, this is a very different t-shirt. I didn't realize. And in fact, I was wearing a different t-shirt earlier on. So I do have more than one t-shirt. So that's
I'm grateful to hear that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yes, my name is Austin Fagan, and I work with teams that develop software products. And I am using this thing called Miro. And I'm trying to, just bear with me, I'm trying to get my speaker notes, just in case I need them, and have this view. So can everyone see my screen okay? Yes?
Not yet.
What? You can't see my screen?
No, your camera is faced towards your face.
But I'm sharing. Oh, wait a minute. What? Hold on.
Oh, were we not supposed to see your private conversations? Oh.
What are you seeing now?
Nothing.
Hold on.
As far as we know, yes, there we go.
Oh, my word. Oh.
Lego Death Star.
Okay, you can see me though, right? And I'm not wearing a t-shirt there, a blue t-shirt, a white t-shirt, I should say. Okay. So yeah, I've been doing product development in Agile since 2006. And I've worked with small startups, when I worked with a consultancy, and I worked with larger corporate clients. And now I'm kind of, in the dark side in corporate. I work as a agile coach / program manager / scrum master / Kanban guy for a business vertical in a company that provides it's IHS market with an I, Derek. Sorry, I don't know where that came from originally, but yeah, it's IHS market, and they provide financial data. And my business vertical is really about supplying data, like big data, as they say, to lots of products in this company. And I might come back to that because it's a little bit relevant as to why I don't do impact mapping that much these days currently, but I have been doing, I've been talking about impact mapping, and I've been doing impact mapping since I worked with Derek many moons ago, I think in about 2012. And I think impact mapping maybe came out a couple of years before that. Okay, so I hope this works. My question, and I don't think, do I get answers? I don't think I get answers, but so that's rhetorical. Yeah, how many of us experience this situation as developers where, you know, success is about delivery? Yeah, that, you know, as long as it gets delivered, a feature or a project or a product, that's great. Yeah, and it might come late. But you know, late deliveries to be expected, you know. But as long as we eventually get there, that's a win. Yeah, everything is awesome. And then the next step is someone goes back to the menu and they make another order. Now, I see this all the time across a lot of the places that I've worked in. And like for me, we get caught in a cycle of just giving the orders. And you know, one time I was at a bus stop in London, I think it was probably 3 in the morning, and I looked down, I picked up a McDonald's manual, yeah, for a worker in McDonald's. And that is crazy intense stuff right there. And I wish I'd kept it. But, you know, we don't work in fast food, yeah? A McDonald's manual will not get us the perfect feature because, you know, we work in stuff that fulfills a more complex need than hunger, yeah? And the important stuff in what we do is actually post-delivery, yeah? And that's what we need to be thinking about and feeding that back in. And that's what I'm going to try and cover this evening. Sorry, as I move, okay, I will get this. So, how often as developers, yeah, do you discover if those features, that product, those changes you made, if it actually resulted in the impact, yeah, that business expected, yeah? And what I more often see is that developers don't even get to see what that expected impact is. They just get given that order and eventually it gets delivered, and then maybe there's a high five and then we move on. But you know, it's the question of, did the business make money from it? Did they lose money? Did they learn what they needed to learn? All that kind of jazz. And I rarely see teams that get to see those outcomes. So we need to reframe success. And we need to stop project management thinking and start product management thinking. Because project managers as a discipline, it's about, you know, making a schedule and ensuring that we meet that schedule, yeah? And that's, in my experience, that's where this delivery mentality comes from. It's where project managers have to meet a schedule, and yeah, sure, they can move the schedule along to it's coming in late, but as long as we get it, that's success. So we need to reframe that success, and we need to start thinking in product management. So we need to connect development teams to those impacts and those outcomes, and that's what I'm going to try and cover this evening when I talk about impact mapping. And I would just want to introduce this name, who I've always seen as the product management guy. And often when people, product owners, this Scrum term, the Scrum role, you know, product owners who I've worked with, you know, whether they're new to the role or been doing it for a while, they often would ask me, as you know, the coach and meant to be the expert on agile stuff, you know, oh, what can we learn? Where can we go to learn more about product ownership? And I always say that it's product management that you need to learn about, because product owner is like, fits underneath product management. It should do. And I think a really, really good place to start learning more about product management is this guy's, all his resources. And he is at this website that I'm showing now, which is short for, I think, Silicon Valley Product Group. Yeah, and that's Marty Kagan. And if you go to that link, you will find just amazingness. Yeah, and yeah, for me, a product owner is a made-up thing. Yeah, but a product manager is a real job. It's a real discipline. And if you are working with product owners or working as a product owner, then you need to start learning more about product management. Yeah, because even if you go back to what Ken Schwaber or Jeff Sutherland were, and they're the founders of Scrum, what they were pitching as a product owner is really a product manager who speaks to the team. Yeah, and often what you get in, especially in a corporate, is in a product owner is someone who might have been a BA, yeah, but they're not empowered, they're not a major player, and that's what a product manager is. And I think a really good TV series, if you want to learn more about product management, is called Halt and Catch Fire, I believe. And that, to me, that guy's a product manager. Okay, enough, I say. But yeah, Marty Kagan, like, highly recommend. Yeah, you will find the blog posts, or you can Google for product team versus feature team, and he will wax lyrical about project versus product and all that good stuff. Okay. So, oh, I'm getting goosebumps. Marty, yes. Okay. So, wait a minute. I'm out of order. So what is impact mapping? I'm going to skip back to that in a second. Apologies. Yeah, so this is impact mapping. It was created by Gojko Ajic. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. I think it's possibly Hungarian originally, via France. But you might have heard of him before. He wrote a book called Specification by Example. Yeah, and that's been around for quite a while. And impact mapping is like I said, something he came up with, I think, in around 2010 or so. But yeah, it's a lightweight collaborative planning technique for teams that want to make a big impact with software products. And it's, you know, coming from design thinking, and it helps delivery teams and stakeholders visualize roadmaps, etc., etc. Yeah, so that is what impact mapping is. And yeah, it would look, it's a mind map. Mind maps are bloody amazing. And we should be using mind maps a lot more, especially in this kind of remote working world that we find ourselves in, because yeah, we need to have visual tools to aid those conversations. And I think mind maps, you know, even outside of impact mapping, I think when you're discussing stories and stuff like that, you want to be mind mapping it, you know, mind map tests, and then how do we test this and all that stuff. So mind maps are really cool. So I just want to take a step back. I should have said this when I introduced myself, but you know, I see my picture of normal software development is working with Scrum teams or Kanban teams, but some kind of agile process. And that normally involves user stories, and that's how we gather requirements. So I'm going to work on the assumption that you guys pretty much follow some kind of agile stuff. And don't worry, no one does agile good, yeah, but we can do it better. Okay, so yeah, this is an impact map. You're going to have a goal. I'm going to go into this, don't worry. You're going to have many actors, but one goal. So it starts with one goal. Yeah, if you've got more than one goal, it's different impact maps. Yeah, we only have one goal, but we will have many actors. Yeah, so the goal is the business why, which I'll cover in a second. But then you'll have many actors, and then those actors may have many impacts, and you're probably going to have 5 or 6 actors, and they're going to have different impacts. And then in your mind map, in your impact map, you're going to have some of those impacts will have deliverables. You're more likely, and I'll cover this when I talk about the workshopping aspect, but you're going to maybe dot voter stuff, the actors that you think are important, and then the impacts. But I will hopefully remember to cover that. Okay, so pause. Okay, so it starts with a why, not Simon Sinek. Yeah, call me a cynic, but no, it starts with why, and it's a business goal. Yeah, it is. Why are we doing this? And sorry, I've lost my speaker notes. Hold on. Oh, there's no speaker notes on that. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so like I said, one goal. And you want to be asking, you know, what is the organization going to get out of this? And in the impact mapping workshops that I've run, often the stakeholders and other people involved, which I will cover, come in and they've got something in mind. Yeah, they've got a project or a product in mind. And often I will say, okay, but we need to find out what the goal is behind this thing. So then we'd spend like maybe 30 minutes brainstorming what we think the goal is. And you know, a really good thing to cover around goals is that it is SMART, and the acronym can slightly change depending where you read it, but I think this is pretty decent. But it's, you know, SMART for a goal, it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's timely. I have seen the A as being action oriented, and you might think looking at this, achievable and realistic are same thing. I think for SMART, really realistic is that it's not pie in the sky. It can get done, but I think achievable for me is that it can get done by the people in the room. You know, it is achievable by that group of people. So the why in impact mapping, your starting point shouldn't be a solution, right? It should be more problem space, you know, the problem that needs to be solved. Okay. So something else to bear in mind when we talk about the goal, the why in impact mapping is once you've identified that goal, once you have your starting point of the impact map, you want to spend some time thinking about success metrics. Yeah, because I think that's the kind of difference in impact mapping thinking, is that metrics, becomes part of how you look at problems. And often in what we do, like I said before, the one metric is, did we deliver or not? Yeah, and then we move on to the next thing to be delivered. So in impact mapping, and there is a book, I'm going to show the cover later, but man, if any of this, like strikes something within you, it is very worth getting the book. It's tiny, so tiny that when you lend it to your American colleague who's over in South Africa for a few days, you lend it to them thinking they're going to read it that night and then return it to you, and then they leave a few days later and they don't return it to you. Bridget, I will find you. Anyway, it's tiny. It's so readable. It's like a picture book. It's like a comic book. Yeah, but it's worth reading, because actually what he talks about scaling is kind of hard to find when you Google impact mapping and stuff. But anyway, the things you need to cover in impact mapping goal success metrics is talk about what's the scale. So what will we measure? And then the meter is, how will we measure it? I think I'm going to touch on that in one of the examples that I provide later. And then the benchmark is, what is the current right now? Yeah. So a benchmark might be, what's the current number of active users that we have? If that's the meter we're using, active users. And then a constraint is, what is, well, first let's cover the target. So the target is the thing, oh, we want 1 million active users. That's going to be amazing. Yeah. So we get our target. Everyone high fives. This is going to be, whoa, world changing. And then we talk about, what we know, 1 million's a target. What do we think is realistic? I mean, okay, what figure, what number of active users can we reach where we don't get fired for abysmal failure? Yeah. So maybe that becomes 60,000, whatever it is. So, you want to identify a realistic constraint, but that's the kind of success metrics that you want to have identified for your business goal, for your why, in that first step of impact mapping. In my experience, it's not too important to get these answers in the workshop, but definitely it's something you want to identify before development definitely begins. Yeah. Okay, so that's metrics for success. And that's just taken straight from the book. That is example, not my book because I don't have it anymore, Bridget. But yeah, that's just some examples where we've got the scale being active players. That's one I just used, I guess. And then you're going to use the game database from it. Here's the benchmark current. Here's the target, and we will be happy with 800,000. And then again, here's something, in money. It's always good to have money. Have money as your scale. Yeah. If you can work it back to money, use money. But yeah, that's just some examples. And again, that's in the book. Buy the book, people. Buy the book. Okay, so we've got our who. No, we don't have our who. We've got our why. That's the business goal. And now we're moving on to that second node in your mind map, which is the who. And the who in impact mapping, there are actors. That's another way of expressing it. And they could be stakeholders, but they are people who will be impacted by what we're going to do, or be impacted by us achieving the goal. Yeah. And then it's actors who can help us achieve the goal, and it's actors who might obstruct us from achieving that goal. And let me get up to date with those bigger notes. There's no bigger notes for that. Okay, so that's the first part of who. And some examples for who are user personas. That's a really, really good one to start with. It might be Sarah, the research analyst. That's a good persona. And then we're going to have Sarah, the research analyst, in our impact map. So user personas, or we might have roles, research analysts. Yeah, we might have a department, finance department. They can help us. HR department, and it might be organizations. And so an example of an organization could be a competitor. Yeah, and that competitor could potentially obstruct us from achieving the goal. You know, maybe they're going to do some spoiler campaigns or whatever. But yeah, that's the who's. And now we come to the most important part of the impact map. These are the impacts of impact mapping. Yeah. And you want to be asking in this brainstorming session that you're identifying, where you're identifying your impact map, you want to be asking how will the goal impact them, and how should their behavior change. So that's where I know the how is actually how will their behavior change. Yeah. And that's something just to remember around impacts. It's about behavior change. Yeah. And how can they help? How can they obstruct? And these are all the things that you will be thinking and brainstorming. It's normally when you're workshopping, you're writing each thing in post-its. Yeah. So you'll have written your who's and they'll be up on the wall. Yeah. And then you are writing down individually what you think the behavior changes for these actors will be. Yeah. And you're sticking them up on the wall, and then you kind of dedupe them. But that's how this brainstorming in this process would work. So I am going to spend a little bit more time on how. Don't worry. But how, like I said, most important part of impact mapping is this section. And you know, if you've spent 3 hours in a workshop and you've identified the hows, you've identified these impacts, these behavior changes, then you know you can call it a day and come back and then move to the next part. But the hows, the impacts is the most important part of the impact mapping process. So some examples of behavior changes, some ways to think about it is where they start doing something or stop doing something or do something differently, or prevent it from doing something. So think more the agent can search, well, no, less the agent can search, more the agent can search faster. Yeah. So there's got to be some change there. You've got to be signifying some behavior change. So you'll recognize that in the language, or it's faster, quicker, better. And within these impacts, you know, you're capturing these assumptions around the actors, because actually another way of looking at an impact map, it's a map of assumptions pretty much. These are not product features, yeah. They are the behavior changes, and you want to avoid listing ideas. Yeah, these are again behavior changes, and avoid implying solutions. And we're going to cover solutions in a second, because solutions are more in terms of the what. Yeah. But another thing to bear in mind with the how is you've got to ask, okay, so how can we measure if this impact is made? Yeah. And when you're in your workshop and you've got your stickies and you've got your nodes, so your how will fit next to the actor, you want to maybe on the back of the post-it or another post-it next to it, you want to write, you know, how it's going to be, how you're going to confirm if the impact was made. So if the impact is search quicker, then just make a note of how you could measure that. You know, maybe it's going to be Google Analytics or some analytic tracking process that you use. But that's the thing, in those impacts, in that how section of your impact map, you want to be thinking about how that impact can be measured, because if it can't be measured, then it's probably not an impact. And when you do come to, if you do try this impact mapping brainstorming workshop, in this part of the impacts, you will find that people often, what they're writing in stickies isn't a behavior change, is actually a feature. And that's cool, because what we can do when it comes to people sticking up that those impacts, we can go, but this is actually a what. So if this is a what, what's the behavior change that this what is enabling? Yeah. But that should become clearer in the next couple of slides. If not, to the Q&A, I say. Okay. What? Yeah, so the what is the deliverable, right? And the deliverable can either be a software feature or it could be some organizational activity, yeah? So if the actor in your impact map is, say, HR department, the impact behavior change they have to do is create a new team of analysts to handle this thing that we're trying to achieve. So that could be, that's an organizational activity as opposed to a feature. So yeah, the what becomes, what can we do to enable that behavior change? What can we do to cause that impact? So that's the level of thinking. And the kind of scope, scale you're looking at in terms of what can be user stories. There might be epics, tasks, product. This is the ideas. This is the, we do this, we can do that, yeah. But this is that kind of product ideation stuff. So user stories, features, software features. So in your impact map, the whats will be the features. And there is a little connection to a user story. So if you take the as a I want so that user story format, the as a will be the actor, will be the who of your impact map. I want will be the what. Yeah, it'll be the feature so that impact behavior change. Yeah, that's the relationship. It should, well, that's one potential relationship, and I will cover that in a second. But again, always think of those what's not as you know, set in stone solutions, but as potential options. Yeah, and that's the other nice thing about when you bring an impact map to a team, because sometimes a development team won't be in the impact mapping session. I do think it's great to have them there. But one of the nice things about this style of facilitation, this format, is that you've got a visual output, a visual tool that you can bring and show the team that here is the features that we are thinking of building, and then they can see those impacts. Yeah, so now their eyes are open and they're not just seeing that, oh, we got to deliver X feature. They're seeing why they need to deliver X feature and what change that feature is meant to be enabling. So we can already see that you know, just delivery is success. We can already see, you know, the ground is is fertile to change that approach and that thinking. Impact mapping makes it easier to get that product management thinking and get those teams, you know, to lift them up from being just feature teams to product teams. Yeah. So, ta-da! This is an impact map. I've taken this from, I will have the link later, but this is from the impactmapping.org website, which is Goiko Agic's website. And there's just amazing stuff if you're interested in finding out more about impact maps. But I've swiped this from his website. And yeah, this is a really groovy looking impact map. But the goal is to grow mobile advertising, and he will definitely have somewhere. It's probably in the back of this card. We can flip this around, and he's got the success metrics probably. But the actors they've identified are fans with mobile devices, and then concert organizers, artists, agents, and promoters. And maybe they've just, this is an impact map in progress, and they've just banged out some behavior changes for the fans. They'll come back more frequently, yeah, frequently, so we can measure that. Yes, it's an impact. They'll stay longer. We can measure that, yeah. I don't know how I would measure that. Bar sales, for me, it would be bar sales. They'd view more ads. Oh, this is mobile. Oh, I see, there's no bar in mobile advertising. Okay, yeah, so here we see the impacts. We can see that we could measure these impacts. And then the deliverables are the features. And you can see that, you know, you don't have to have a one-to-one relationship in a story to a deliverable. There might be, you might have split those deliverables up into multiple stories. I'm going to cover a way to use that kind of thinking in a few slides. I don't have many left. Okay, I think I'm okay. Okay, whew. All right, so that's an impact map. Well, a very simplified one. I wish Derek had sent me the one he did, because I could have showed that's full marks, Derek, full marks. Okay, so where to begin? Where to begin? So it is a workshop format. That's one way of doing it, right? And another way is something I've invented. Well, I did it one time. I've done it a lot actually, and I think it's a really cool way, especially where you don't have the influence to drive the kind of change. You know, you don't have the influence to pull stakeholders into a workshop. Yeah, impact mapping thinking is still super, super valuable, and that's where reverse impact mapping comes in. And I will 100% come back to that. Okay, so a little bit about the workshop. So, who needs to be in it? I think business people, yeah, so your business stakeholders, a couple of them. I think it's a bit dangerous just having one, but a couple of them, and a product manager, if you got one, or a product owner. But man and woman, I would say that if you're in a corporate and you've got a product owner, I don't think it's a good idea to just have a product owner in impact mapping workshop, because they may, in actuality, not be empowered and just be an analyst of some description with a different job title. Yeah, you need to convince them to pull in some business people. Yeah. So yes, business person, product people, UX, great to have some of the development team, or if you can, all of the development team. But the good thing about, if you can't bring all the developers in, that you have this visual tool. Yeah, the impact map, it's like highly communicative, and you can have it, you can have it physically, or you can have it using a few tools like Miro, or Mind Map is another one. I will have the link for Mind Map at the end slide. I do think less people is more better. Yeah, like just one thing about workshopping is you don't want passengers, for starters. And when I say a passenger, I mean someone is just going to like just sit there, take the free lunch and the cookies and not add that much. And having someone, it's having someone in the audience, yeah, an audience in a workshop, there's nothing worse. So sometimes you got to have some hard conversations about why someone shouldn't really come in, but don't worry, there's visual output. Yeah, we're tracking everything. Yeah, so the impact mapping workshop is a really great way to facilitate a conversation. Business people love it, right? Because it is asking great questions in the why, in the who, in the how. Yeah, and where me and Derek, where we started doing this, business loved it. They loved it because it went from just long-winded, just meetings where like, what happened in that meeting? What was the decision? Well, I don't know anything. We had this impact map, and they were like, whoa, super cool. So business do love this, trust me. So yeah, less is more. Yeah, I would max 12 people. Yeah, that's the kind of thinking you want for a workshop like this. So when would you do an impact mapping workshop? Well, the ones I've done have been where people are bringing features, products, projects in. Yeah. So then you want to have it, before development begins, you want to have a product concept. That's the impact mapping. Yeah. That's one when. That's one answer to the when. Another answer would be when they think of business goals. Yeah. If you've got the leadership, then okay, we've got a goal. So we know we want to do these goals. Let's do some impact mapping. Yeah. And yeah, that's probably the scenario where you're not going to have the team, or you'll have less of the team involved. Then you just want, it's good to have one representative from development at the very least. That's one rule I would say. How long? I think 3 hours. That's 3.5 hours, maybe 4 hours. Is a kind of workshop I used to run, and that's really sweet timing. It gives room for breaks, and then you're looking at maybe say 30 minutes for the goal discussion. What is the goal? What's the measurements? And then I guess it's like an hour for the who's, or maybe 45 minutes and for the who's, and then the hows might be an hour and a half, and then the what's can be less time again, because the how, like I said, is the most important. Yeah, so, and then what next? Okay, don't worry, Derek, I'm not going to run over. The what next? So think about it. This is a map of assumptions, yeah? You are assuming that these who's will help you achieve this goal. You're assuming that the hows, yeah, those behavior changes will help those people help you achieve those goals. So there's a lot of assumptions, and a really good thing to do next is, because the cheapest way of validating an assumption is not to build software. Yeah, like hit the street. Yeah, ask people, test your assumptions before the cost of the exercise of software development. Okay, reverse impact mapping. It's so sexy. So you want to start with what you have, right? And what you have is you've got all these stories. So what I would do is I would get those stories on a board, on Miro, on something, and then I'd be asking, okay, so I've got these stories. If I achieve this story, what is the impact? Yeah, what is the impact? What is behavior change with that story? And you might think, oh, well, the answer is in the Agile, I want so that. But actually, what I see mostly of those kind of stories is an assault on the English language. Yeah. And you just get stuff to fit into the format, but it's not actually answering the question, which is so that what is the impact? So you might find that you've got multiple stories like this that will fit underneath your impact. And then the good way of thinking about it is if you do sprints and you've got a sprint goal, right? That maybe a good fitting for your sprint goal is an impact. Yeah. And then all the stories, most of the stories in your sprint fit into make this impact, make this change. That's a really good sprint goal to have. And what can also happen in the review after that review is measuring, measuring that that impact was made, and then the team hearing about whether that impact was made. So that is reverse impact mapping. Is that all I've got to say in reverse impact mapping? Oh my God. I believe it is. I believe it is. So, escape the fast food features. Where delivery is success, yeah? Real success is post-delivery. And that's what we need to track and measure. That's what we need to share with our teams. We need to deliver impact, and we can only deliver impact. I think best chance of success for delivering impact is knowing what the impact was in the first place. And that's why we want to impact map. Thanks. And John, questions. There's a picture of a cat. Cat's on my t-shirt. Yes, not the LinkedIn t-shirt. That is, yeah. Okay, I'm done. Thanks, Derek. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Awesome. Thanks, Austin. I think that's the book you're talking about, right? The one that you never got back from Bridget, is it?
Bridget. Yeah.
Picture at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you. So I think there is one question, looks like. Okay, so how often would you revise the mind map? Only create it at the start or look at it multiple times per month or year?
I would look at it every sprint review. Yeah. I'd look at it in, where the product person is going to the business people and going, what next? You want to bring up that impact map. It needs to be a living document. You need to add to it, change it. But yeah, I would be making it visible all the time, and definitely sprint reviews in sprint planning, in your kind of grooming sessions. Yeah, look at it all the time. Did I answer the question? Was that the question?
Well, the question was how often do you revise it? So how often do you go back and actually change it again?
Yeah, so you revise it when something changes. So you might learn this behavior change didn't happen from this feature. So what else can we try? Yeah, so you'll add more potential impacts, more assumptions around what will achieve that behavior change. It might be another feature. So yeah, you should revise it when you need to. When you learn something, revise it.
Okay, cool. And I think that's the only question from the group. I have a question, maybe a little bit hard to answer actually, but when you breaking up those actors, right? I mean, obviously you mentioned you can either have departments or it can actually be actual users. What granularity should you typically go to? And in an enterprise setting, you could get, within a department you get potentially different types of users within that department. I mean, should you go all the way down to that granular level, or do you think you should just kind of leave it as higher?
I mean, it feels like you should identify the particular roles. Yeah. So bearing in mind that a who can be a department, but it can be a role. And you can give it a go where you break it down, and then you might find, oh, the behavior change is the same for, a calling research analyst to a web research analyst, something like that. And then maybe you might decide to merge them. But it feels like it might be useful to break it up. Yeah.
Okay, cool. There is another question from Mika, who's experiencing some frustration with the product owner, who couldn't really elaborate the impact of a particular story, and couldn't explain the information about it. So what can they do or say to product owners to let them use impact mapping?
Okay. I think the first step is, empathy, because, product owners, it's a title, but it can mean different things in different organizations, right? So this product owner may not be empowered and may not see the full picture, and maybe even the impact isn't known to the business person that this product owner is dealing with. It may be someone else. Yeah. So I think you gotta help reach out, and it's more like, I want to help you, product owner person. Yeah. Like, let's discover the impact together. Yeah. And just show them the kind of reverse impact mapping thinking, and ask them, just how are we going to measure success for this story? And if they don't know, then go, geez, it might be a really good thing to find out. So make it a journey together rather than an argument. Yeah, that's what I'd say. Geez, what was the question again? Did I answer the question?
Yes, you did. I think you did. Yeah, the question was really, well, what can I do or say to product owners to let them use impact mapping? And Mika said, yes, you did. So thank you. That's great.
Buy them the book. Yeah, but oh man, that doesn't work all the time. I've got a bad reputation for leaving books at people's desks, and then I know they haven't. There's nothing's changed. But I would go have a look at the impact mapping resources, and just have a dig around, because there's lots of cheat sheets and one pagers. Another thing for this developer, I'm assuming it's a developer, is buy the book themselves and read it, just learn the language and the questions, and just ask these questions. But you need to, like I said, I think you've got to approach it like it's a journey together, and it's product management. And wouldn't it be amazing for this product person to grow? Maybe you shouldn't phrase it like that, but I really feel for product owners, because they're given a job title, but they're not empowered, and
cool. Okay, great. Well, thank you. That's the last question and ended almost perfectly on time. So thank you very much, Austin. Well done. Thank you. So I really appreciate your knowledge and what you've shared here with us. I definitely see value in implementing it, and at the various projects that we're busy with, it's definitely important. I think, ultimately this is a great way to cut out waste that would normally come through onto the backlog. This really just helps you identify what is important, and that at the bottom line is efficiency and means money. So that's really great.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Sorry, MindMap, just FYI, MindMap is the mind mapping product that Goiko Ajak kind of made so it's pretty cool. but I tend to use Miro more for mind mapping. But yes, anyway, sorry, I should have said that. But yeah, thank you for inviting me to speak. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, great. And thank you to everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Cool.